Hi, hello Jinen, welcome to yet another podcast for DronaHQ. And today I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about the new launch, Actionflows. So tell us why Actionflows? What was the need behind coming up with Actionflows?
Thank you for having me. So it's a very good question. Why action flows? So if we look at the evolution of DronaHQ as a platform, we came out with workflows as a first step. And what really happened and what we realized is when we came out with the workflows, a lot of things which could have ideally happened straight from the front-end application, we really had to move the workload into the workflows, and all the heavy lifting had to be done on the workflow side.
So I understand Actionflows, you have kind of heavy lifted the actions that were happening in the workflows at the back end and put them in the front end. Is that correct?
So partially, yes. One of the major calling was that, but obviously, that's not the only thing that we ended up achieving, right? A lot of applications, when you are looking at powering up in your front end on the front end side, you need way many more things. For example, output of one API, you might want to pass it on to another API that you might be calling. Chaining of API is what you call it. Or depending on the response of an API, you might want to throw some alert boxes, and you might want to show appropriate messages, whether it's successful, whether it's some failure message or whatever, right? And you might also want to make sure, depending on the output, you might want to set some values, reset some controls, reset some pages, navigate to some pages altogether, etc., right? So overall, it allows you to not just do those tasks that used to happen, but also give you a lot more flexibility to build more sophisticated front-end applications, which otherwise was not really the case, right? So this is what it adds: a huge, humongous power to the platform, to its capability to build front-end applications. And I guess if we see the new crop of applications which are being built, brilliant, all extremely powerful, and sky's the limit from here on.
Yeah, I think that is very fantastic that the power and the complexity of the apps which can now be built are not just going to be like data capture or showing the data, but much more kind of complex logic and complex algorithms and complex applications can now be built with this low-code platform.
Yes, so I completely agree with you on this, because I'll take a case in point, right? So in one of the applications that we primarily use internally, right, a CRM application. Now, just because now we have an action flow, the entire application has become exceedingly powerful because of our ability to now do small little stuff without really going to the workflow, and giving a user an experience that if there's, let's assume a simple stuff, like let's assume they're adding a notes into the into every case, for example, right? It's hitting right up into the system there and then. The user gets to see it. He gets to see it's getting appended into the notes and stuff like that. And now that's ideally what a user really wants. So it's not really a data capture, but it's coupled with an experience, right? So
yeah. So you have elevated the definition of low code from just a data capture or data output applications to a huge complex applications.
I believe it's going to go that path. That trajectory is that it's a fantastic way in which you're creating applications at lightning speed with minimalistic coding, if at all needed. And as and when more we work with our customers, more we understand what more is required, and that customer obsession is allowing us to add the right features, the right capability into the tooling, so that you could do more and more with the platform, and in an extremely meaningful way. So our challenge has been, from a product team standpoint, is how do you keep things simple and yet make it powerful? And I think drawing that balance is where we believe we are doing a great job.
Fantastic. So, Jinen, tell me about how does the user, the platform, how will they go about adding work action flows?
So yeah, so now we are getting into the technicalities, how to, yeah. So it's pretty simple. I think in DronaHQ's parlance, most of the things that we have, right, be it binding data to to a UI element or everything. So we have data elements, we have properties. We just added yet another thing called as action. So there's an entire action framework. Now the beauty about this action framework is, it is expandable. So which means, today let's assume there are 8 or 10 things that you might see on the front end side that you could do. Let's assume tomorrow you want 11th thing. Let's assume something like an autofocus, for example, right? Every time you open the screen, you want say this control to be highlighted, for example, and you don't have it in the system as of now. So you could actually build that right into it, right? Now, so coming back to your question, on the right hand side of the menu, for every control, whichever is supporting an action framework, you would see that, a small Thunderbolt kind of stuff over there. You click it, and then there is an entire workflow like building tooling, which is available, which is step by step. You could go about building an entire flow of what happens when you click on that specific, either a button or a placeholder in your control or wherever, right? And then there you go.
So how does it work?
So behind the scenes?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think it's straightforward, right? I think when you click on that button, you actually generate an event. Now that event is what you're gonna do on that event is what you actually define in the action flow. Now that's a hardcore technical stuff that actually happens, right? And then what really goes behind the event is what the user really defines when he puts in all those blocks. So for example, you might just want to put an alert, you might want to do a navigation, you might want to open a new micro app, or you might just want to call an API, or you might want to call some some of the DronaHQ features like updating a sheet, for example, or doing a push notification, and so on and so forth, right? So those blocks are kind of like the building blocks of what happens behind the scene, and depending on the way you would have structured it, your action flow would kind of get executed onto your front end device or web application, wherever it is getting used, and that's how it's supposed to work.
So this brings a question that how is it different from workflows?
Again, wow, it's a so simple answer is action workflows happens, whatever work happens is on the front end side, on the device, on the user's end. Workflow, it's behind the scenes. Sure. So the moment you submit, it becomes like an array of tasks that gets added into your for your backend systems to work on. That's a fundamental difference between the two.
Yeah, so users who are looking at exploring action flows, Jinen has already mentioned a lot of new blogs that you could use, probably navigation to screens to different applications within the platform, and push notification, updations, validations, and more. Jinen, any particular use case that you've found or you built on an app which was built and used action flows and you were like, wow, this is a fantastic use case that you would want to share with the audience here?
So I saw recently one of my customer using action flow brilliantly. So they were creating a front-end calculator of some sorts, and it needed data from variety of different things that the end user is kind of computing, and depending on the choices and the selections that the customer was the end user had to make, there were a lot of rules that had to be applied, certain new things had to be shown, some things had to be hidden. So that entire rule engine, and then the use case was simple that depending on certain values that you are putting in, you need to call certain APIs, bring in some data, and depending on those data, again, some more APIs had to be called. So maybe because it's a customer and it's use case, and I'm not really quoting the customer here, so I'm just keeping things. But nutshell, they were creating a very complex calculator, and they were able to do it very, very beautifully. I might just say one more use case here, because here is another customer of ours who's trying to build for a customer success team a tool for that as and when they received a customer support ticket. Now that for that ticket there was an order ID which had to be kind of mapped to their e-commerce tool, which was Shopify, and depending on the order, the customer success team had to see what is actually the order for the customer. Now this entire chaining happened on the action flow. They took the customer the order ID, basis that they got to know some information about the product. Then there was another API within their system that had to be called to get more details about that particular product, and then it was displayed onto the front end for the customer support team or the customer success team. Now that was a classic use case from the customer success point of view.
Fantastic. These are nice. Any last thoughts that you would want to share with the audience, and why they should or how they should go about exploring action flows?
I think simple choice would be if you want things to happen more real time, look at action flows. If you want things to happen behind the scenes, for example, still like say an approval flow, for example, you need a human intervention. That's gonna stay with the workflows. So that's a simple choice on how you should go about it. There's a lot of documentation coming along as we speak, and I'm sure there will be some videos and other stuff for our customers, users to go through it. So I think you'll otherwise get it. We made it with the same philosophy of keeping things simple.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and views and behind the scenes about action flows.
Thank you very much.